G'day, Bomber fans. Well, there have been a couple of more list changes in the last day, and this is where it gets rough. You know, the ones after the trade period. This is when players are really unlucky to be told that they're without a home for 2026, because that's what's happened with Ben Hobbs and Luamon Lual. Two players really unlucky not to be on our list next year. Obviously, there are constraints. We've only got a few spots available for the draft. We needed to make some changes, and these two young players are on the outer. They won't be offered contracts for 2026. Will Setterfield is still in limbo. We'll talk about that as well. We'll talk about Hobbs. We'll talk about Lual, and we'll talk about how many list spots we have going into the draft. So let's get into it. Let's start with Luamon Lual, someone I think we all really enjoyed watching this year. The athletic wingman joined the club in the 2023 draft. We took him with pick 39. By the way, I did a mock draft on the channel for that, the 2023 draft back in the day before we traded up for Caddy. And I had us taking James Leake, Logan Morris, and then Luamon Lual with our last pick. So this is a guy I was eyeing off quite a bit in his draft year. I was pretty excited when we got him late in the second round, and this was knowing that he was always going to be a bit of a project player coming into the system, and that was evident in his first season in 2024. He never really got close to making his league debut. He was in the VFL, and his VFL form was patchy, often built around moments, usually out of the back half. That flexibility and versatility to play elsewhere came out late, but then in 2025 in the preseason, we saw him really hone in on locking down on a position, which would of course be the wing, and when injuries began to hit the club halfway through the year, he was handed his debut. Mason Redman was a late out against Carlton on the King's Birthday Eve game, so Luamon Lual got up for that game, even kicked a goal early on debut in front of his family and a big crowd at the G, which was great. He'd then stay in that injury-depleted side, managing to play 12 games for the year, even after he was absolutely crunched in that marking contest against Geelong, landing on his head. The guy really did crack in and put his body on the line for the Bombers in the short career he had. I think we all knew that his ability and size was probably holding him back from being an effective player, but his attitude was great, and if we had more list spots than we currently do, I would have 100% been down to see him re-signed and get another year solely because of his attitude and his attack on the ball. I really loved seeing him apply a forward half pressure, and his closing speed on a kick-in was a genuine asset for us forward of the ball. In the end, though, this year the club has 5 picks in the first 2 rounds, 3 first-round selections. We're going to have a great opportunity to upgrade parts of our list, and unfortunately for Luamon Lual, that actually happened before the draft when the Bombers announced the signing of Braden Fiorini. I think when that happened, we all kind of knew that Lual was probably going to be one of the names delisted. Fiorini is, of course, a wingman and will come into the first team, knocking Lual further down the pecking order. So, yeah, it was no surprise to see Lual delisted after that. However, it's disappointing to see his career end after just 2 years. He is a project player who was always going to take time, but I'll say, since being drafted, I did start to lose faith in the project a bit and completely understand why we're going with a different option, I guess. I really liked him in his draft year, and I think he's got great fitness and a great attack on the footy, but he's clearly not at the level, in other aspects of his game. So, yeah, we thank Luamon, who helped us out a lot this year and gave us some highlights to cheer about. And the other delisting, this one really hurts to think about because it's Ben Hobbs. I remember that 2022 season. I think all of us were really excited to see Hobbs and Perkins and Cox and Reed and everyone evolve. Hobbs was, of course, pick 13 in the draft, the 2021 draft after those 3. And in 2022, he broke onto the scene as that nuggety midfielder, playing mostly forward of the ball, but showing good signs in the contest too. He earned a Rising Star nomination and played 17 games in his first season. That was bettered in 2023. Hobbs got up to play 18 games, ending the season on a real high, averaging under just 20 touches a game for the year. He was genuinely pretty good that season, but unfortunately that was the best we'd see of Hobbs. His development stagnated a tad, partly because of injury, partly because of form, and in 2024 he only managed 12 games, averaging just 12 touches, and although he did play out most of his footy up forward, he kicked just the 2 goals for the year, which kind of showed where he was going. And in 2025, yes, he played 18 games, his equal most in his career, but it never really felt like his spot in the team was set. He was often playing because of injury, and when he was playing, it was up forward, out of position. Even when midfielders started going down with injury, Scott was trusting other options in there instead of Hobbs, Kako, McGrath, even Archie Roberts late. Hobbs in his first 2 seasons at the club was playing a forward mid-role. In 2023, he was going at over a third of the game at centre bounces. In 2025, it was under 10%. He was forced out of the midfield. He was losing touch with the forward line. Unfortunately, Ben Hobbs had fallen down the pecking order, and, realistically, with a fit team, he would have played quite a lot of VFL footy. So Hobbs was delisted after playing 65 games in since 2022. The 22-year-old is now without a home. Although, unlike with Lual, whose future is looking more uncertain, there does seem to be some external interest in Ben Hobbs. Last year, Collingwood were one of a few Victorian clubs to ask the question, and according to Cal Toomey, clubs were keeping tabs on Hobbs this year, but more likely as a train-on option in the supplemental selection period. I think it's now more likely Hobbs finds a new home than Lual. He clearly is good at the contest and has some real inside craft about him, but unfortunately the club just didn't really need him in the midfield, and he wasn't versatile enough to perform up forward. Maybe another club finds a use for him in an under role, but unfortunately for Essendon, it's just another one of Dodoro's first round draft blunders. Nothing against Hobbs. I really liked his efforts early in his career, and again, if we had the list spots, this is a guy who easily could have gotten another year, another chance, but with only 4 or 5 players being taken in this year's draft, the first round picks are just better options than an up and down Hobbs. Will Setterfield is yet to be delisted. He's yet to receive a new contract extension. Realistically, Setterfield, we don't really know what's happening, but at his best, he's a genuinely decent player. His form halfway through this season was really strong. Before that injury, he was one of our better performing players in the midfield, and that is kind of the story of Setterfield. We know that at his best, he's a very capable, big body in the guts. He's able to shut down, but also able to play first possession, but I guess his body just isn't good enough. He's played 13 games this year with that foot injury, not a great return. He also hasn't managed to play more than that since 2020, and at 27 years old, having played less than 100 games, the most games he's ever played in a season was 18 for Carlton back in 2018, and last year he only played the 4 games for us. The year before that it was 10. The truth is, as consistent and reliable as Setterfield is at his best, he's just not available enough, and as we know, the best ability is availability, and that's why I thought that he was someone who we probably should have delisted. In fact, there were worries that Setterfield wouldn't even be right to go for next year's preseason, and obviously, we don't know the decision yet. Maybe he has been delisted, but he hasn't been extended, he hasn't been delisted yet. The club is clearly taking time to think about Setterfield more than Hobbs and Lual, and I'd say it's more likely to offer him that 1-year extension. Do I think that's the right move? Personally, no. I thought he was lucky to get that extension last year, but the club have brought in that new high-performance duo. I'm sure they're, thinking there'll be a turnaround with some of the regular injured players, and there'll be a trust that, some of them could get right, and maybe Setterfield's one of them. But yeah, given he wasn't announced here, I'm going to assume that he's more likely to receive a new contract for 2026. It'd be mostly for midfield depth and experience, you'd think. So now with those list changes, it means we currently have 39 players on the list, which after the rookie spots are shuffled around a bit, means we can take a maximum of 5 at this year's draft. Obviously, if Setterfield is to be delisted, it would mean we can take 6. But as it stands now, there are 5 available list spots on Essendon, 5 picks in the national draft. There's every chance that we close, the way we close out the season, we may not have spots for the rookie draft. We may just prioritise the national draft and add to our list there. Also, by the way, keep in mind, Nick Cox and his concussion panel occurs before the year ends. So the club will be keeping tabs on options for the supplemental selection period for that reason, in case Cox is given the instruction to retire. So yeah, we now know that we have a further 5, at least 6 or 7 with Cox, changes still to come for our list. But yeah, again, we got to thank Luamon Lual and Ben Hobbs, both really unlucky. Any other year, they probably get another chance to get that extra year, but unfortunately, there is a lot of turnover on this list, and yeah, for these guys, it's not a good thing, but I think for the club, it is. We're having to make hard decisions, which means we're continuing to add to the list. You might look at it as just 5 draftees, 1 player traded in. Remember, though, there are also 3 mid-season draftees on top of that, so that is 9 additional changes, 9 additional players on our list that we didn't have last year, and 9 players off it. But yeah, that is that, really. Cheers for watching, Bomber fans. Plenty more to come on the channel. Like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and as always, go Bombers.